You understand your addiction. You know the loop. You know the triggers. You have watched the videos. You have read the science. You know exactly what is happening in your brain when the craving arrives. And you still go back. This is the most painful place a person can occupy. Not ignorance, not confusion, understanding without change, seeing the trap clearly, and stepping into it anyway. If that is where you are, the owl has been waiting to speak to you, because this is the video that was always meant to come after the others, after the neuroscience, after the biology, after the dopamine and the loops and the chemical explanations. After all of that comes the truth that the science alone cannot reach. Your addiction is not only a malfunction, it is a message, and until you understand what it is trying to tell you, no amount of information will set you free. The owl is going to take you deeper today than this channel has gone before, into the territory that two of the most profound minds in modern understanding of the human psyche spent their lives mapping. Carl Jung and Joe Dispenza. Different eras, different languages, one consistent discovery. The conscious mind is not where transformation happens. It is only where it begins. Let us start with the foundation. Your subconscious mind is your automatic operating system. It does not think. It does not reason. It does not evaluate whether what it is executing is good for you. It executes. It executes based on what was programmed into it through repetition, emotional intensity, and experience. Which means when willpower and subconscious conditioning compete, willpower is almost always outweighed, not because you are weak, not because you lack discipline, because you have been using the wrong tool. You cannot override the subconscious with the conscious. You cannot think your way out of a program that runs below the level of thought. You have to reach the level where the program lives and change it from the inside. Here is what the subconscious is actually doing when the craving arrives. It is not malfunctioning. It is solving a problem, the same one it has successfully solved hundreds or thousands of times before. The loop runs beneath your awareness. A trigger fires. An emotion rises. A script activates. I cannot handle this. I need relief. Just once. The ritual executes. Relief arrives. The subconscious files it as confirmed. This works. By the time your conscious mind has registered what is happening, the loop is already in motion. The body is already preparing. The hand is already moving. This is not weakness. This is a program running exactly as it was trained, and programs do not change by being told to stop. They change by being replaced. Now the owl descends into something few dare to say clearly. Your addiction is speaking, not randomly, not maliciously. It is speaking on behalf of something in you that has not been heard. Carl Jung devoted his life to mapping the unconscious, the vast interior territory that operates beneath everything you consciously know about yourself. And Jung made an observation about addiction that most modern recovery frameworks have still not fully absorbed. Addiction is not simply a behavioral disorder. At its deepest level, it is often a distorted reach towards something the psyche is missing: completion, integration, a sense of being whole rather than fractured. The person who cannot stop drinking is not primarily seeking the alcohol. They are seeking the silence of the inner critic, the stilling of the weight of being themselves, a moment of dissolution from the unbearable pressure of their own mind. The person who cannot stop using is often not seeking the substance. They are seeking transcendence, a crack in the ceiling of their ordinary consciousness, a glimpse of something larger, something freer, something that feels like relief from the constriction of who they have been told they must be. Jung observed something extraordinary about this. The Latin word for alcohol is spiritus, the same word used for spirit, the same word found in sacred ritual across every ancient culture. This is not a coincidence. The alcoholic, at the deepest level of their compulsion, is reaching for something larger than themselves. Not in a religious sense, in a deeply human sense. Call it the higher self, the part of you that exists beneath the noise, beneath the habit, beneath the ego's daily management of ordinary life. They are reaching for a genuine connection to that part of themselves, and finding only a counterfeit version of it. The substance is a counterfeit ritual. And here is what this means for the question of healing. You cannot heal the counterfeit by simply removing it. You must replace it with something real, with something that genuinely reaches what the higher self was always pointing toward, something that offers actual transcendence, actual connection, actual liberation from the weight of being oneself. The owl will return to what that something is, but first, Jung must show you the deeper architecture. Jung called the hidden interior landscape, the shadow, not evil, not pathology, simply the parts of the self that were exiled, the emotions that were too large to be allowed, the needs that were never met, the versions of yourself that were shamed, suppressed, or denied until they retreated below the surface. The shadow does not die when it is exiled. It waits. And when the conscious mind cannot manage the weight of what has been stored there, when the unprocessed emotion becomes too loud for ordinary life to contain, the shadow finds an exit. And often, that exit is the addiction. Here is what the owl considers the most important thing Jung ever said about this territory. Your higher self speaks to you through your addiction, not in spite of it, through it. The compulsion is a messenger, arriving not to ruin your life, but to deliver something from the depths that your conscious mind has not yet dared to face. The question is not, how do I stop this behavior? The question is, what is this behavior protecting me from feeling? The owl asks you to sit with that question, not answer it quickly, not perform an answer. Sit with it. What feeling do I consistently avoid with this habit? What happens inside me in the moment just before I relapse? What do I believe I am gaining when I engage in this pattern? When did I first learn to reach outside myself to manage what was inside me? And what need is genuinely unmet in my life right now? Not the habit, the need beneath the habit. These questions are not asked to excuse your pattern. They are asked to locate its actual root, because the behaviors you cannot stop are almost always serving a function. And when you understand the function, when you can see clearly what the habit was solving, the habit begins to lose its claim on you, not through force, through the light of honest awareness. What stays unconscious controls you. What becomes conscious can be transformed. There is one more thing Jung observed that the owl must give you. He called addiction an unconscious attempt at initiation. In every ancient culture, people were guided through deliberate trials of transformation. They faced darkness, the dissolution of the old self, the death of who they had been, not to be destroyed, but to be reassembled into someone larger. The modern world offers no such ritual, no guide, no structure, no meaning. So the psyche constructs its own. The addict becomes a self-initiate without a map, descending into darkness without a guide, seeking transformation without language for what they are seeking. This is the most dangerous path of all, but it is also the most meaningful, because the descent was always real. The seeking was always real. The hunger for transformation was always real. The owl is the guide that was missing. This descent does not have to continue in the dark. Now the owl turns to Joe Dispenza. And here is where the science meets what Jung was describing. Dispenza has spent decades studying what happens in the body and brain when people undergo genuine transformation. And his discovery clarifies something that most people struggling with addiction never understand. The addiction is not just in the behavior. The addiction is not just in the mind. The addiction is in the body. The body has been conditioned to be the mind. Every time you return to the habit, every time the relief arrived after the craving, every time the emotional state shifted through the substance or the behavior, your body learned, not intellectually, biochemically. The body learned the emotional baseline. The body began anticipating the relief before the conscious thought even arrived. The body became the program. This is why you can make the declaration, "I am stopping," with complete sincerity and complete intention. And within hours, something begins speaking, not in words, in chemistry, a restlessness, a specific irritability, a thought that arrives like a voice of reason. Today is not a good day to start. Tomorrow would be better. This week is too stressful. I deserve this one last time. That voice is not wisdom. That voice is your body attempting to return to the known, to the familiar emotional state, to the baseline it has been conditioned to expect. Dispenza calls this the body becoming the mind, and once you recognize it for what it is, you stop obeying it. Here is the most important thing Dispenza discovered about genuine transformation. Insight never changes behavior on its own. You can understand everything the owl has shown in this series. You can know the dopamine mechanism. You can trace the shadow. You can see the program clearly, and still the body will return to the known, because the body does not respond to insight. The body responds to experience. Repeated, felt, emotionally real experience. This is why the practice of changing your emotional state is not optional in the work of transformation. It is the work. The owl is going to give you the architecture now. Not a philosophy, a practice. The first layer is what the owl calls the receptive window. There are 2 moments in every day when the barrier between the conscious and subconscious is thinnest. The moments just before sleep, and the first moments upon waking. In these windows, the analytical mind quiets. The filtering, criticizing, evaluating function steps back, and the subconscious is open. Whatever is received in this state with genuine feeling attached to it is not processed as instruction. It is received as reality. Most people spend these windows in the same patterns that reinforce the same programs they are trying to escape. The owl offers you a different use of these moments. In the window, before sleep, breathe slowly until the body begins to settle. Then choose one statement about who you are becoming, not who you hope to be, not what you are trying, who you already are. I do not need the pattern. I protect my clarity. I face what I feel instead of escaping it. Choose one. Repeat it slowly with genuine feeling, not performance, not pressure, calm certainty. Then hold one image, not a motivational scene, not a dramatic transformation. A single ordinary moment of your daily life without the habit in it. Doing something you do every day, simply, quietly, without the pattern as part of it. Just free. This single combination repeated in the receptive window is not spiritual wishful thinking. It is the neuroplasticity of the sleep threshold being used deliberately to impress a new reality onto the substrate of your automatic behavior. Done consistently for weeks, it accumulates. And accumulated impression in the subconscious is how new identity is built. The second layer is what Dispenza calls changing the state. When the trigger fires and the familiar pull arrives, pause. Not to argue with the craving, not to reason with it, not to negotiate. Simply notice the body. Where does the urge live physically? Is it tension in the chest? Restlessness in the hands? A pulling sensation? Simply observe it, without acting. Because here is what the research consistently shows. The craving is a wave. It rises, it peaks, and if you do not feed it, it passes. Every time you observe the craving without acting on it, the neural pathway that connects the trigger to the behavior weakens slightly. Not dramatically, not all at once, but measurably and cumulatively. Dispenza describes this as the moment that defines you. When the body gets agitated in the meditation, when the discomfort arrives in the quiet, when the familiar emotional state begins pulling toward the known. The person who stops teaches themselves they cannot change. The person who stays, who breathes through the discomfort, who keeps lowering the volume to the craving without feeding it, is telling the body something new. You are no longer the mind. I am. And Dispenza is direct about what this requires. A difficult sitting is not a failed one. Discomfort is not evidence you are doing it wrong. The only real measure is simpler than that. Did you stay, or did you reach for the exit? Every moment you sit with the discomfort and choose not to escape it is a moment the body loosens its grip on the program. The body acquiesces. Not quickly, not dramatically, but it acquiesces. And when the body finally releases the grip of the old pattern, something unexpected happens. Not just freedom from the behavior, a liberation of energy. The energy that was bound in the maintenance of the old emotional state becomes available for healing, for creation, for a life that the old program never had room to build. Here is the third layer, and it is where Jung and Dispenza arrive at the same place from completely different directions. The trauma is not in your story about the past. The trauma is in your body. It is stored emotionally in the tissue, in the nervous system, in the baseline emotional state that has been running below your awareness sometimes for decades. This is why insight alone does not heal. You can understand exactly why you are the way you are. You can trace every wound to its origin. You can build a complete narrative of your history, and the body will continue living in it. Because the body does not process language, it processes chemistry, and the chemistry of the old wound has been present so consistently that the body has accepted it as its normal state. Dispenza's work points to something precise here. There is a difference between remembering an event and reliving its chemistry. When you can recall exactly what happened, without your body re-entering the emotional state it was in when the event occurred, something has shifted. The memory is still there. The charge is gone, and a memory with no charge left in it stops being a wound. It becomes something closer to understanding. That shift, not forgetting, not denying, not rewriting, is how you are freed from the past. By completing the emotional processing the body never finished. By sitting in the presence of the feeling until the feeling is no longer larger than you. Until you become the one who experienced that, rather than the experience itself. This is not abstract. This is the most practical work in this entire video. Because what keeps the addiction running is not the substance. It is the emotional state the substance was managing. And the emotional state the substance was managing is stored in the body. Address the stored emotion and the need for the substance begins to dissolve. Not through willpower, through completion. The owl must say something now about forgiveness, not as a moral instruction, as a biological one. When Dispenza's own research at his events measured oxytocin, the connection chemical the owl discussed in previous videos, in participants who had genuinely released long-held resentment and moved toward states of gratitude and love, the levels rose sharply. And here is what elevated oxytocin does to resentment. It makes a grudge neurologically very difficult to sustain. Not through effort, not through a decision to forgive, through chemistry. When you feel genuinely whole, when the nervous system is producing the chemistry of connection and love, there is simply no energy available for the old resentment. It does not require forgiveness as a moral act. It requires the elevation of the internal state above the level where resentment can sustain itself. And here is what this means for addiction. When people mistake love for pleasure, when they confuse the deep satisfaction of genuine wholeness with the temporary hit of the habit, the craving has its engine. But when the person begins to access the genuine states, gratitude, appreciation, love, not as performances, not as ideas, but as embodied feelings, this is what Dispenza's own research has repeatedly reported. The body becomes a pharmacy, producing the compounds of calm, connection, and coherence that the addiction was always counterfeiting. When you are genuinely whole, there is no need to want, not as a concept, as a biological reality, because wanting requires lack, and wholeness does not have lack. Here is what the owl needs you to understand about how long this actually takes, because subconscious reprogramming does not follow the timeline the ego wants. The first 3 days, the body will protest loudest. This is when the tomorrow voice is strongest, when the familiar state pulls hardest, when the receptive window practice will feel like talking to a wall. It is not a wall, it is a door that has not been used in years. Your task here is simply repetition without expectation. The first 3 weeks are where the two practices begin to compete. The old pathway, worn smooth by years of repetition. The new impression, still thin, still new, still uncertain. This is where most people quit. Not because the old pattern is winning, but because the new one has not yet felt real. It will not feel real for a while. It becomes real through repetition, not through belief. The first 3 months are where the subconscious updates its actual file on who you are, not from the statement you repeated, from the evidence your behavior has been quietly providing every single day you chose differently. This is the same architecture the owl has described in every video in this series. 3 days to survive the shock, 3 weeks to out-repeat the old groove, 3 months for the file to change. The subconscious was never going to be convinced by a sentence. It is only ever convinced by proof. Jung's answer to the deepest question of addiction and Dispenza's answer to the deepest question of transformation arrive at the same place. Meaning. Until the psyche has genuine meaning, something it is building, something it is protecting, something that answers the question of why this life, in this body, at this time, the habit will always be available as a substitute. Not a good substitute, but a fast one. And the psyche, when it cannot find what it truly needs, will take the fast version. You do not need to find your purpose today, but the owl asks you to begin orienting toward it. Ask what burns in you quietly or loudly, a craft, a relationship, a thing you are building, a version of yourself you have always sensed was possible, something that says to the deeper part of you, this is why you are here. The habit will always compete with emptiness. It will rarely compete with meaning. The owl has one more thing to tell you before this descent is complete. You are not here to fight your mind. You are here to update it. The subconscious that keeps returning to the pattern is not your enemy. It is a loyal system doing exactly what it was taught, and you are the one who can teach it something new, not by being stronger than it, not by white-knuckling past it, not by understanding it from the outside, by entering the level where it lives, and slowly, consistently, repeatedly showing it a different reality, not by telling it, by showing it. The nervous system changes through experience. The body changes through repeated emotional states. The identity changes through accumulated evidence. You are not doing anything wrong. You may simply be taking too long with the old tools. The new ones are here now. Use them. If this video gave you something worth sitting with, like and share it with someone who would appreciate it. Subscribe to the Owl's Burrow, so the next descent is ready when you are. The owl will see you there.